Hello and welcome to our weekly look ahead at the markets. And over the course of the last few days, we've seen bond yields move quite sharply to the downside. The market repricing where it thinks global central banks are going to be going over the next few months, pricing in earlier cuts on the Fed funds futures curve. And that's really after that UK inflation report came in rather weaker than expected. That was good news for the Bank of England. Core inflation is still way too high. But it is going in the right direction. I think that's the narrative, and it's always in the markets often about narrative and the direction of travel. So we did see bond yields move lower and stocks pumping off the back of that sort of narrative. So looking ahead to the coming week, we do have some important events coming up. Specifically in the terms of the central banks. So first of all, the Federal Reserve. On Wednesday, it's expected, in fact, almost certain to deliver another 25 basis point hike. The question for the market, though, is whether this is one and done, as the last CPI report maybe suggested. Again, that was that sort of feeding into that disinflation narrative. And that softer CPI number from the US was the initial catalyst for some of these bond market moves that we've seen, and for the stock market to rally, particularly some of the tech names. So the market's going to be focused on the Fed outlook, its guidance, what the Jay Powell says in the press conference, whether he leans into market pricing, suggesting maybe this is the end of the hiking cycle, next step will be to cut, or whether he suggests that maybe there's going to be a bit more left to run. The market is pricing in cuts. That indicates that the economy is going to suffer, but the soft landing narrative is also playing out at the moment, and we see earnings are holding up pretty well. They are down, but about 4/5 of S&P 500 companies that have reported so far have beaten expectations. It's the usual set the bar low though, and then exceed it kind of play. And then coming up this week, there are a lot more earnings due out on Wall Street. About a third of the Dow is reporting. Some of the big sort of industrial names, Boeing, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, for instance, also 3M. And some of the big tech names, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta, among some of the biggest names. They're among the Magnificent Seven stocks that deliver most of the rally for the market this year. They're going to be reporting numbers. That's after Tesla disappointed somewhat. Netflix also was a bit of a disappointment. But I always look at Netflix and Tesla as kind of outliers in terms of the core tech names. You've got Meta, and in particular Alphabet and Microsoft right at the very heart, along with Apple. And that's reporting later in the season. Also in the central bank space, European Central Bank expected also to deliver a 25 basis point hike. Again, September, though not nailed on, so the question is not whether or not we get a hike this time, but what the guidance is for the rest of the year. They look to be in a similar position to the Fed, and some of the members from, even some of the more hawkish members of the ECB Governing Council have sounded a little less hawkish than maybe they have done this year. So maybe looking at a potential peak in interest rates for the ECB as well. And then it's the turn of the Bank of Japan. Inflation is at a 40-year high, but the Bank of Japan has been playing it pretty cool in terms of tweaking yield curve control, in terms of normalizing monetary policy. We did see the yen try and tap below 138 against the dollar, just holding on though to that level as the dollar came back last week. But the yen has moved quite aggressively higher, I think partly on expectations that the Bank of Japan will be looking to move. And it might be that the Bank of Japan looks to wait until maybe the inflation is cooling off a bit, so that the pressure, the market expectation has reduced, and then it surprises. So we'll look to see whether or not there's any movement from the Bank of Japan. I don't think just yet we're going to get any signals from them, but maybe later in the year they'll be signaling for early 2024 for some kind of movement. And I think you'll be seeing the yen maybe moving a bit higher again, still off the back of that. So lots to look out for in the coming days, and we'll keep you posted here. Thanks for watching.